frame a little bit about how we're going to be interacting today. This is really just a community opportunity to engage with each other, to connect with each other, ask questions, learn about the work that's been taking place with Sustainable Solano, Suisun City, as well as other agencies like BCDC as well. And there is a lot of interest in regards to what does sea level rise mean to Suisun City. So today one of the things that we're going to start off with is doing some education, and Alex will talk to you a little bit more about what that's going to entail. But for myself, I just want to first of all thank you for being here. Thank you. I'm recognizing faces of agencies that work with us, from Sustainable Solano and our Fairfield-Suisun sewer district as well, and community members who have been great advocates about climate change, about sea level rise specific to Suisun City. And one of the things that we want to be consistent about is continuously raising awareness about this for us locally. I know people are really busy, so I'm really grateful that it's going to be captured here today so that we can continuously educate other members of our community. And it really is to engage in the conversation, to educate ourselves, to create awareness about it, to start working on what steps are coming forth. A couple of things that you will be learning about is the community project resiliency workshop we did with the Nature Conservancy, thanks to partnership with Sustainable Solano. The Nature Conservancy let us know we are the first city on the west coast of the United States that they have facilitated this workshop for. So we are already engaging in leadership in regards to this topic and in regards to Solano County. And so we really are very excited about that. And as we go through the day, we're going to start off here. There will be opportunity to eat together so we get to know each other better because we're in this as a community. And then for myself, I totally forgot to introduce who I am. I apologize. Just because I see familiar faces. My name is Alma Hernandez. I currently serve as Mayor Pro Tem for the city, also known as Vice Mayor. I'm the interim mayor at this time as well. And I grew up here in Suisun City, so since I was a child. So as we grow and learn about the needs of our city, there are so many people that I'm engaging with out in the community who are not aware that this is happening. And so just to be able to say, did you know, are you aware, is a starting point of having this conversation that is so important. And this is because we care for community, we care for our earth, and we care about engaging on this topic together. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Alex from Sustainable Solano, who will introduce himself and tell you a little bit more about today.
Well, thank you, Alma. My name is Alex. I'm the Resilient Communities Program Manager with Sustainable Solano. And I guess just to give a quick breakdown of how today's going to unfold. So we're going to have a few presentations. First regarding the flooding issue itself, along with a few potential possibilities with how Suisun can respond to this problem. And then Corwin with the Fairfield-Suisun Sewer District is going to give a presentation on a project they're working on as well. Following these presentations, we're going to adjourn for lunch. Our wonderful interns, Haley and Marcus, are going to be in the back table. They made a diorama to illustrate physically how flooding could look like in Suisun moving forward. So they'll be in the back there. So please be sure to give them some love and hear them out. And then after lunch, we're going to go ahead and start our community roundtable, where we're just going to foster a conversation around flooding and see what solutions we as a community want to implement to address flooding issues. Perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and start us off with a bit about flooding in Suisun. So, next slide, please. So, our work is primarily informed by a report conducted by the Bay Conservation and Development Commission. In 2020, they published this report, and it was on how rising sea levels are going to impact cities in the Bay Area. This report found that Suisun in particular is vulnerable to flooding as a result of these rising sea levels. Do I need to be a little louder in the back?
No, I guess they can hear.
Yeah, we can hear you.
And just to give some quick stats on how flooding is going to look like in Suisun. So by 2030, The estimated water level rise due to sea level rise and climate change is going to be around 6 inches, with a 1 in 200 chance of that getting up to around 1 foot. By 2050, so just within the next less than 30 years, that number could range between 13 inches, and then the 1 in 200 is going to be nearly 2 feet. And that is purely just for how water level is going to increase due to sea level rise. However, when Suisun is coming up with plans and solutions to flooding and trying to make itself more resilient, that is only one factor that we need to consider in building up our infrastructure. Flooding and overall water level has 3 main components that we need to be looking out for. So that first one, again, is overall sea level rise. Second, we need to prepare for possible water level increases due to tidal events, particularly king tides. For those who don't know, king tides are abnormally large high tides that occur 1 to 2 times a year. And this is primarily a result of the Earth, Moon, and Sun kind of being in this perfect alignment to where their gravitational pull can have a greater impact on our tides. And this could add an additional 1 to 2 feet on top of our already maximum high tides. And the third and final thing that we need to consider when developing flooding resilience solutions would be storm surges. So storm surges are a bit unique in that they obviously don't only hit our low-lying coastal areas. We need to prepare our streets in inner city as well to prepare for the impact that these storm surges could have. And again, all these, none of these are in isolation. If we have 12 inches of sea level rise and then a 12-inch storm event, that's 2 feet of overall water level that we need to prepare for. And next slide, please. Perfect. And just to show you on a map how flooding is going to look like at these certain water levels. So to begin, just to orient ourselves, we have that purple line in the middle, that's Highway 12. The little green arrow is the downtown Marina area. And then to the south, we have the Suisun Marsh. And next slide, please. And this next slide shows how just 1 foot of overall water level increase in the Suisun area would impact the city. And as you can see, mainly the marsh itself would be flooded over. However, we would start seeing overtopping along Grizzly Island Road as well, so there would be some infrastructure issues there as well. And at 2 feet is when we start to see more residential problems along with flooding. At 2 feet, we start to see the communities to the west of the marsh along along Marina Boulevard and Whispering Bay. Those communities are going to start feeling the impact of overall water level increase in flooding at 2 feet, along with the communities west of KELLOGG and north of the Rehabilitation Center. So these communities are going to be on the front line for dealing with flooding, and if we don't do our part to protect our city, they're going to be facing the brunt of it first. And next slide, please. And finally, we have 3 feet of flooding. And this is when we see overtopping throughout the whole of our downtown Suisun. So even that concrete barrier surrounding the marina would be overtopped. And as a result, at the 3 feet mark, we're going to see over 750 household units affected by flooding, 820 jobs potentially lost, and then over 450 rail passengers per week will be displaced as a result of our Amtrak being flooded over as well. So again, these we need to have this sort of economic understanding of what flooding can do to our city. And it's not all doom and gloom. We do have ways to address flooding issues and prepare ourselves and prevent said damages. And that starts today. Just by being here and taking part in this workshop, we're doing the first steps in preparing and developing plans for how we want to continue forward. With that being said, there are 3 main strategies or 3 main spheres that we could think about solutions falling into. So first, we could think about developing protection infrastructure and solutions. So that's trying to prevent the water from flooding over in the first place. A common protection infrastructure example would be levees, which Suisun was built on to begin with. We wouldn't exist without our complex levee system. So continuing to develop those and ensuring their constant maintenance is one example of protection. The second sphere would be adaptation. And this strategy is basically saying that while we can't prevent the water from flooding over, what we can do is protect ourselves and make sure that our buildings aren't actually damaged by said water issues. An example of this, I know in some nearby cities, I believe such as Redwood City, they're starting to build some of their houses in flood-vulnerable areas on stilts to ensure that their foundations aren't being damaged. So again, this is an example of adaptation. And finally, we have what is most likely the most drastic of our strategies, which would be retreat. And this is basically saying that we can't prevent the flooding from happening, we can't prevent the damage, so what we need to do is cut our losses and move to higher ground. Obviously, that doesn't seem ideal for homeowners in these flood vulnerable areas. However, a second aspect of this strategy as well would be to consider rezoning, and areas that are set for development in these flood vulnerable areas, rezone them and to no longer have that development, so there's no potential for future flooding moving forward. And next slide. And just in conversation with folks, I know that a constant concern is where our jurisdiction lies, what power do we have over, what specific land. So in the top right, we have just a outline map of the Suisun and its jurisdiction. Sorry. And then we could cross-compare that to the bottom left, which shows what areas of land are owned by the state of California itself. So we can see that primarily the marsh leading up to Highway 12 along Kellogg is primarily going to be the state's responsibility, but what we have the power to do is protect our areas in the map in the top right. And the next slide, please. And as Alma alluded to earlier, in June we facilitated a workshop with the Nature Conservancy where folks got together to kind of do a similar thing to what we're doing today. Talk about the issue of flooding and learn about it, and discuss what sort of actions they want to see implemented. And we actually have some folks who participated in that workshop here again with us today. But a few actions that, that were highlighted as a result of that workshop were as follows. So the big thing that was addressed was the lack of funding that Suisun has to adequately address these flooding issues moving forward. So a big part of the actions identified have to do with getting access to funding that will not only help us better plan and develop a both short-term and long-term sort of framework for us to abide by, but also get funding to actually help us implement said infrastructure solutions as well. Additionally, a few other priority actions include collaborating with, collaborating with other nearby cities to form a coalition of flood vulnerable cities to get more attention on the importance of us, and the impact that flooding has on us, which will hopefully get broader state and federal recognition, since it's a broader coalition of cities needing to address said flooding. In addition, like I mentioned before, doing some rezoning and reevaluating areas for development to ensure that we aren't building on land that's just going to end up getting flooded over. And then for this final slide, again, this is the same coalition building in collaboration with other cities near us that are also dealing with flooding. And then another priority action was just further education and outreach to share the word of flooding issues in Suisun and how we could solve them. Taking ownership of our marsh, what our whole marina and downtown area is built around, and using that as a tool to inspire conservation and protection of our city and our nearby wildlife. And thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to give it to Corwin with the Fairfield-Suisun Sewer District. Oh, that is a fair point. Any questions? Yes.
Just a comment. You talked about the most likely prediction and then the 1 in 200 chance. I think it's correct to say, if anybody has other information, please correct me, but I think it's correct to say pretty much every prediction about the level of sea level rise and the extent of global warming has come true, but much faster than anybody ever thought. the predictions are everything is always much worse than even conservative predictions. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking, oh, those unlikely things will never happen. Maybe they will.
No, thank you for that. Yes?
I'm just curious to what extent the march protects Suisun City from rain-fed flooding events, water coming down the Sacramento and so on.
Yeah, definitely. So there have been a few studies that have shown that wetland, not specific to Suisun, I don't know if, John, you have any information on this direct specific about Suisun, but I know that wetland ecosystems have the potential to actually hold on to about 30% of stormwater runoff. So they are a great sort of sink to collect excess water. However, the ability of the marsh to protect us from said runoff is going to deteriorate as sea level rise increases. As we have increased salinity here in the marsh and as water levels continue to rise, we're going to start seeing parts of the marsh die off. And if we have an excess of water already, and if we continue to pile up, as seawater continues to infiltrate, it's going to just limit the availability of the marsh to actually soak up the additional stormwater. Yes?
This might be for BCDC. I don't know if they're doing a presentation later. But my understanding is BCDC was very opposed to bait bill previously, and I understand that there was going to be a conversation about possibly changing that in light of sea level rising and needing to have more fill to protect. So does BCDC have a policy that is now more in line with the needs of sea level rise concerns?
I can take that. Hi everybody, my name is Jackie. I work for BCDC, the Bay Conservation and Development Commission. And just as a very quick note, BCDC was founded 1960s as the first coastal management agency in the United States. And it was really actually to address, as you mentioned, the issue of fill. And at the time, a lot of people were filling in the bay, just with no regulation at all, and the bay was getting smaller. So that was a while ago. Things have changed. And so we have a San Francisco Bay Plan, which is all of our policies that guide development along the bay. And we recently, last year, 2 years ago, we did amend the Bay Plan for fill for habitat. So we still want to make sure that we are regulating fill for water-oriented uses, and we do recognize now that protecting habitats and allowing habitats that elevation space needed to migrate is really important. So we have done work to amend our policies to ensure that we're thinking about habitats as a really resource in sea level rise. And we're continuing to really look at our policies as well. And things change, and so we are an agency, so we have to go through a lot of processes to do that. But we're also looking at things that fill for potential adaptation, and that's not an amendment process we've started yet, but we're a pretty, I think, we're a responsive agency that really looks at issues as they are changing today, and making sure that we're still in line with our mission to protect and enhance the San Francisco Bay, and that we're really doing that responsibly. So, thanks for the question.
Any other questions at the moment? Okay, perfect. And if anything comes up, we'll be able to address it, either during lunch or the round table later.
Thanks, Alma. I think I can flip through. Hi, everybody. Thank you to Alex and Solano for hosting this event, and especially to Mayor Pro Tem Hernandez for your leadership on this issue in the city and raising awareness. My name is Corwin. I am a senior environmental engineer at the Fairfield-Suisun Sewer District. And over the course of my career, I've always worked on projects that combine the conservation and restoration of ecosystems with conventional engineering approaches, conventional types of infrastructure. And I joined the sewer district about a year ago to work on those types of projects. So happy to be here today and share some of the projects that we're starting to conceive of and implement in our community. So a little bit about the sewer district. So we're, Suisun City is in orange, and gray is where the wastewater treatment plant is located. We serve more than 140,000 residents within the city of Fairfield and Suisun City, so we collect in the community. It comes to our wastewater treatment plant, and which is located on Chadbourne Boulevard, and we'll see it in some of the maps here. And we clean the wastewater, and then we discharge the clean water to the Suisun Marsh. And we take that responsibility very seriously, because the Suisun Marsh is an incredible resource that we all benefit from and that surrounds us. So it's a stopover, just one example, for 1.5 million birds along the Pacific Flyway. This is just incredible, and it does play a part in how we will adapt to and respond to the climate changes that are happening around us. So when I joined the district, there were some conversations that were happening about how we could be the greenest plant and how we can lead by example to demonstrate what sustainable infrastructure looks like in practice. What does that mean, sustainable infrastructure? I think that's a global conversation right now, but what it means to us is that we are resilient and we were designing and we're building with nature. And I want to share 3 examples of projects that we're developing today, over the course of the next months and years, to demonstrate and live up to this vision. The first one is a community treatment wetland. They would be located at our wastewater treatment plant property. The second is KELLOGG Resiliency Project, which is, Alex go, he kind of alluded to this particular region and its vulnerability to the future sea level rise predictions and scenarios. And then the third is, maybe this is the first time today you're hearing about this project, which is a Suisun Force Main Reliability Project that we're developing. So starting with the community treatment wetland, many of you probably followed the news over the summer about the algal blooms in the San Francisco Bay and the associated fish kills that were linked to that bloom. And one of the contributors to the algal bloom and how much it was able to spread is the nutrients that discharges from wastewater treatment plants like ours that are located all around the bay. And so we're looking at a lot of different options for what we can be doing now, in the next 2, 3, 5, and even 10 years to reduce the amount of nutrients that we're discharging to the Suisun Marsh and to the San Francisco Bay. And we've initially identified a section of our property along the eastern edge as being a candidate property for a treatment wetland. So this would be using an ecosystem to further clean our wastewater and remove nutrients before it discharges to the marsh. And our vision here is not only can we reduce nutrients from reaching the San Francisco Bay, but we can also incorporate elements that address sea level rise adaptation and resilience for the sewer district and our customers and surrounding properties, and create equitable access to open space and walking trails. So really looking to integrate multiple benefits for the community. So the second project I want to touch on is the KELLOGG Resiliency Project. So now this is like the 4th time you've seen a version of this sea level rise prediction map from BCDC and their Adapting to Rising Tides tool, which is pretty incredible. If you want to go online and check it out, there's a lot of different scenarios that you can evaluate. And hopefully you can see it there. The KELLOGG pump station is a line shown in red, at the end of a line shown in red there, near the Wildlife Center. And what the pump station does right now is it collects the rainwater that falls on our roofs and our streets and our sidewalks, and it comes down to a detention basin and flows to the pump station. And then that pump station lifts the water up and delivers it to the slough. And it provides a really essential service for removing that freshwater flooding from the neighborhoods here in Suisun City. And so we want to preserve that function into the future. In addition, this site is one of the first that's predicted to flood in future sea level rise scenarios. So how can we be improving the resiliency for freshwater flooding, sea level rise flooding, and then as many of you know, this was also the site of a tragic fire in June of 2020. So how can we be incorporating defensible fire space into this project? Kind of looking at all these different types of resiliency and multi-benefits. So our current vision for what we might be able to achieve as a part of improving the resiliency at Kellogg is to address flood and fire, clean the stormwater, in addition to being able to manage it well, and then again, being able to provide equitable access to open space and walking trails. Okay, third project is the Suisun Force Main Reliability Project. So in downtown Suisun City, or at the end of Civic Center Boulevard, is a wastewater pump station. So this pump station collects all of the wastewater, most of the wastewater in Suisun City, and then it pumps it in a couple pipes that are shown here in that neon green color back to the wastewater treatment plant. And those pipelines are over 50 years old. They're at the end of their useful life, and they need to be either rehabilitated or replaced. This is a big project. Over 3 miles of pipeline. It's a big investment. So we're in the early phase of looking at alternatives, but how can we take this investment that we're going to be making, financial investment, to also incorporate resiliency and multi-benefits into this project that benefit the community and kind of our long-term ability to adapt in a future climate. So one other thing is, keeping this map up, is we can think about these as individual projects. We can also think about them holistically and how they all connect and can work together, can complement each other to increase our resiliency. So I would love to answer your questions, but I also have questions. We also have questions for you about what multi-benefits, what priorities, what concerns we should be incorporating, listening to, considering right now as we develop the different concepts and alternatives for these 3 projects. And so we have a Mentimeter set up. You can go to menti.com, enter that 6-digit code. You can scan that QR code, and we've got some different handouts set around that will have that you can scan or you can talk to us. I also have an iPad set up so you can answer it directly here, if that's easier for you as well. So before I end, I want to just touch on the next steps. So our goal is to collaborate with all of you to develop the long-term solutions for our community and to address these future conditions. So the next steps for each one of these projects, for the community treatment wetland, we're continuing to evaluate different project alternatives and estimate costs so we can start to apply for funding to do the thing. It's a big project. This is like 10, 15 years to reach our full level of implementation. These aren't fast. This is not a fast project. We've applied for initial planning and design funding through the Water Quality Improvement Fund from the EPA, and we should hear back on that by the end of this year. On Kellogg, we do have some initial funds to begin the concept design process, and that's through the City of Suisun City and some ARPA funds that they have, which is excellent. So starting now through January, we're going to be developing different project alternatives, and then we'll be hosting a community design charrette that I enthusiastically invite you all to join and participate in to give us feedback on these different alternatives that we're going to propose. We also have the incredible fortune of benefiting from some advocacy that Assemblymember Wilson was able to do for our committee. She secured $8.6 million in the state budget for the Kellogg project. It will be for design, full design, and construction. So whatever alternative we conceive of, We're going to build as much of it as we can with those funds. We're currently waiting for those funds to get transferred to the sewer district from the State Water Resources Control Board. The last project is really in a similar timeline over the next 6 to 8 months of looking at different alternatives and picking a selected alternative to move forward with. So thank you for being here today. Thank you in advance for your input and participation in how we can collaborate to advance these projects. And I really encourage you to reach out to me at any point. If I don't have the answer, I'll tell you and I'll try to find it, or I'll connect you to we can work together to connect and try and come up with the path forward. So with that, I'll leave this Mentimeter QR code up. If I saw some of you trying to snap the picture before I moved on. So I'll leave it open, and I'm happy to answer any questions, I think, before we go to lunch. Yeah.
I see your force main project. I don't see exactly how it ties in with some of the other access to green spaces. Is that a project that could possibly help with flooding or something like that? Like, I don't really understand how that project ties into the other two, I guess.
Yes. So one potential path that's going to be evaluated is, which I had a pointer, but where you see the text that says Cordelia Street.
Yeah.
So that stretch of pipeline along Cordelia Street will likely be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And as that happens, we'll be modifying the road potentially, or the area around the road, and that is a zone where sea level rise could come in the future. So the design elevations, for example, of where we place the pipe, or if we incorporate some sort of levee in the zone where we're laying the pipe, then that can work to protect the community from future.
So my suggestion is this, because this is you will need transportation money to expand the road. So I would suggest putting this, you have to work with the city of Fairfield-Suisun to get on the Solano Transportation Authority's list of projects, and they would easily fund something like this. If you're going to replace the road and you just wanted like bike lanes, then that's like the perfect project for them to fund. But it has to be like known, and it has to be on priorities. So Ms. Hernandez is on the board, I know. But this is a fantastic project to just like add on, ask for $300,000, $400,000, and it would be like a slam dunk.
And I think bike path was on one of your graphics.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, if we're incorporating a levee and expanding the road and doing the pipe, could it also be a bike lane or a walking access, or kind of create that continuity that I think my impression is that residents in Suisun City would use and would benefit from. That's really one of the questions we're looking for affirmation for in the survey so that we can pass that on and kind of continue to advocate for incorporating that into the different design alternatives that we're considering.
And I'll just add, currently we have a development on that Cordelia Road. 71 new homes, single-family homes are to be built. The groundwork is starting now, and so this is very relevant in regards to who's going to be living there in the future and what that affects. So,
They can actually go to the
My name is Chavez. I live on Humphrey Drive, and I'm not a resident of downtown. Actually, I'm in outlying areas, but I'm surrounded by different canals. So that's why I came today, because some of this is very relevant.
Yeah.
Some of the issues that we have is the vegetation. We also have encampment encroachment, and we have illegal dumping and trash.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of hoping that I'll be educated today how some of these issues might be dealt with, in these programs. Thank you.
The unsheltered kind of challenges, the population challenges that we have, the challenges around illegal dumping and trash and ending up in our streams and in the ecosystem and kind of in our community is definitely it's a challenge everywhere. And I'm not going to say I have the answer to that. And so, but I think having that be top of mind as we look at these different projects and think about what could we be doing to address the issues that are in our community is a really important part to be having in the design conversation.
Absolutely, and especially due to the fact that when we have the vegetation, the combination, we had flooding down the creek, and it was to the point where it almost went over onto the sidewalks. That's how deep the water was. So I'd say it was a good 6 inches, 4 to 6 inches.
Okay.
And so
And that was just from that big
That was
rain
just-
event?
that was the big rain event.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's blowing trash, it's blowing, it's all coming out. It just looked like somebody fired those garbage right there at the beginning of Humphrey Canal. And so, then it goes from Humphrey Canal to the canal that runs behind Cheryl and Santa's Valley. So there's just so much effect.
Yeah, it's cumulative, right? It's like, these are the sea level rise maps, and Alex alluded to this. It's like, well, precipitation, or amount of rain we're going to get is going to change. The groundwater levels are also going to be coming up. So, like, you start to stack all these things that flooding that could move farther upstream maybe isn't shown on these maps right here, but it could be part of the issues we'll be addressing.
Well, I don't know if this is the event for this discussion. We can't get too much in the weeds, but I do just want to ask or make a comment that there's also, in addition to all the demands that you've mentioned on the sewer district, there's a lot of future demands that are being talked about. There's new logistics centers that Suisun is considering. It's my understanding at the last sewer board meeting, there was a proposal for sewage treatment for a new housing development, Woodbridge 66 in, what's the name of that? Down there by Suisun Valley Road. So I don't know if you have any comment about the ability of the current infrastructure to handle that, or how that might, the future needs might exacerbate the problem of climate change impact on wastewater processing infrastructure.
I will answer part of that question, maybe. One is to say that the capacity of the treatment plant is, I was hoping the animation would go again, but there it goes, is excellent. So we currently have capacity to treat about almost 24 million gallons per day. And we typically treat between 10 and 15 million gallons per day. So in addition, the active treatment process, that kind of gray infrastructure that you see there, is located on about 150 acres, and we own an additional 380 acres around that. So in terms of treatment capacity and capacity to expand, the plant is incredibly well maintained. We have an incredible asset here, and the treatment plant and the leadership, the history that's gotten us to here today. So in terms of our ability to accommodate future development, it's strong, very strong. So.
If I may add, because I also sit on the board for the sewer district, one of the things we did this fiscal year was also approve specific funding for capital improvements to look towards the future, because they have a map of all of the pipes that are in Suisun and Fairfield, especially in Old Town Suisun. There are older pipes, and the type of pipe material is different. And so we are already on schedule to start replacing some of those pipes, and there's a timeline for that to ensure, just as you mentioned earlier, the sustainability and longevity of the wellness and health of those pipes. Because they also contribute to ensuring that storm drainage is also a part of that conversation. So there are other leaders as well that are looking at this, and it's part of the result of being able to have plans in place looking ahead, but ensuring we're investing and saving right now. And that's
so that kind of major maintenance and the rehabilitation and replacement of how we can be more resilient and green within our property. And we've identified 10 different projects, and a community treatment plant, or community treatment wetland is one of those. So there's 9 other initiatives that we're going to be working to advance in the future to make our plant kind of be ready for the future. So, somebody else have a question?
Emily, can you please go back to the slide that shows the 3 projects?
Yes.
I have a question about, oh no, the map.
Oh, the map.
Yeah. So the central pump station
Yeah.
is the white building. Right? Is
So
that
The KELLOGG.
the white building, yeah, sorry, is actually in the picture is the Suisun pump station. The central pump station is the blue dot. It's more towards the center of the photo.
Okay, so the Suisun pump station is on the edge of a waterway that absorbs some water from the marsh, right? I don't know what that's called. It's like a little slough, but it's not, but it's a built slough, right?
That, I believe, is the Mulberry pump station and channel. It's not quite adjacent to the pump station, but
Oh, okay.
so maybe keep
That's what
going
I'm
and
thinking
here.
of. And then there's some kind of levied uplands in that area that's open. Can you talk about the potential of that area and possibly the land where the storage facility is for some sort of levy solution or something that might serve our community?
Yeah, I will say I'm less familiar with that stretch of water edge, but my understanding is that the vulnerabilities and the opportunities there are similar to what we're going to be looking at KELLOGG. So that though maybe a higher risk because it is more directly water facing. So I'm going to speak more to, well, I'll mention a couple of things. So the Suisun pump station itself is the elevations of the infrastructure is designed for high level flooding events. So the future functioning of that pump station, you can imagine what happens if it stops working, right? The sewage will back up into our community. So we want that pump station to continue functioning into the future. So that is very important. So directly to the east of that is the Mulberry channel that I referred to, which is a stormwater channel that collects stormwater in that neighborhood. And then there's another pump station there, the Mulberry pump station, which does a similar exact thing that the KELLOGG pump station does. So the way we've been talking about it and thinking about it is the type of solution that we develop and identify at KELLOGG, we think can be a great model to transfer to that area, over to Mulberry. And so I'll kind of leave it at that, and that I don't know yet what the answer is going to be, but I'm hopeful that that kind of fire access, ecotone levees, so these are levees that incorporate ecosystems as a part of the design, are going to be part of the solution with the able to apply there.
And do you own that property right there? Does the sewer district own that property?
So we, don't quote me on this, even though I think I'm being under a lot, but we own the pump station property. We do not own the sewer pump station property we own. We do not own the stormwater pump station property. Those are city-owned properties, and the sewer district has a contract with them to do the maintenance.
Okay.
So that's our connection to those facilities. We're not landowners, we're more partners.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And while this map is up there, I think it's correct to say that the city also owns the property directly to the south of that main pump station in Suisun City. And I believe it's correct to say that I don't know if it's the city manager or the chief planner, but at city council meetings has talked about that property as being a possible site for future high-end, single-family dwellings, rather than a living levy. So just FYI, when, if we start to talk about areas that might need to be rezoned or whatever, that might be an example of such an area.
So I also will add, and Alex, I think, did a great job of presenting this, how you can adapt these different options you have. And I also think about it in terms of green and gray. So in some places, gray-only infrastructure like seawalls is going to be our best, most appropriate defense. And on the other end of the spectrum, a purely green solution like ecosystem restoration or conservation is going to be best. And then in other locations, it's going to be some combination of green and gray. And where one of the things that green infrastructure needs is space, which is why there are going to be places along our coastline, around the bay, around the world, where we won't have room to incorporate an ecotone levy or these different elements because there are development pressures or there are other demands or constraints that just make it in that location, that's not going to be feasible or the kind of the most likely alternative to move forward with. I guess I would encourage us all to think about that whole spectrum of opportunities from green to gray and our coastline and where each one